Coming up on The Returned.
Most of my life, I was a victim. I'm grateful that I drowned in the pool. I'm grateful that I went through life review. I met an all loving and amazing God. I met a God that had a sense of humor. I met a God that said, look, here's your life. And boom, it is like magic. And you are watching it on the other side in heaven.
Hi, and welcome to The Returned. The truth always follows you back. Hi, and welcome to The Returned, a place where we share near-death stories, out-of-body experiences, spiritual awakenings, signs from spirit, and the journeys of healers and light workers from around the world. Today, I'm honored to be sitting with Thayne Martin. His journey includes surviving severe childhood trauma, living with dissociative identity disorder, and experiencing a near-death moment that became a turning point of profound integration and insight. Thayne, welcome to The Returned.
MJ, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
You're so welcome. Before we talk about the near-death experience, I'd love for you to start with who you were before it all happened. What was your inner world like growing up? And did spirituality or religion play any part in your life at that time?
Sure, absolutely. So, a little bit about myself. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I was born into a beautiful family. I have a wonderful father and a loving mother, older brother, younger sister, and we lived on a little teeny tiny street. Didn't grow up with a lot of money, but we got by. But it was a great little neighborhood, or so my parents thought when they purchased their home there. Um, I had a normal childhood until around age 4 or 5. That is when I started being groomed by a boy that was in my neighborhood, but I didn't know what grooming was. It was something that was foreign to me. I didn't like it. And I also made it known that I didn't like it. But there was an experience that happened that caused me to be permanently silent. And I don't like to go into the details, that's personal, but there was very specific reasons why as a child I could tell nobody. And sadly, I can go back to that in my life, and if I had to do it all over again, I would choose the same exact path. I would not change one thing. And I mean that. And I say that because of who I am today. And I would not be the man that I am today had I not walked through many, many fires in order to get to this. So if I had to go back in my life and repeat it, it would be an exact repeat of everything that happened to me, including the ugly things that happened, after I began being groomed. So a little more about that. There was a man that had moved into my neighborhood. He and his wife had purchased a home catty corner from us. And, my parents were, we had two little boys and my sister. And so we were very active Mormons, and Mormons often help their neighbors. My mom would have us go mow yards and rake leaves, and it was mostly to wear us out and make us tired so we would sleep, but it was also goodness. And I always got good feelings from the neighbors, right? So I had raked the leaves at this house many times, and I knew the wife fairly well. I did not know Mr. Dillenbeck, but I knew the wife enough that I actually had sold her a bottle of honey. That I had sold as a fundraiser for band. And we had assembled in the summertime so that we could raise money before school started so that I could rent an instrument. And I was trying to rent a French horn. Another funny story, but we'll let that go. So it was July 4th, 1976. And we had a big block party. It was a bicentennial celebration. And my parents and my family had assembled about 5 houses north of me. And it was all root beer and homemade root beer and hot dogs and burgers and swimming and fireworks and kids on bicycle parades. And it was magical, which is what it was supposed to be. So we broke open a piñata and I grabbed the candy and I gathered it and I ran home with my candy because I shared a room with my brother and I didn't want him to find my candy. So I went home to hide my candy. And when I left the door, I realized that the Dillenbecks were home and I had been trying to deliver the bottle honey and collect the money so I could turn it in next week with school. So ultimately, I just knocked on the door. That was it. I knocked on the door and Mrs. Dellenbeck was not home. Mr. Dellenbeck was home and he leaned his head out the door. I understand that what he was doing then. I did not know then as a child, but he was kind of checking the road, like, does anybody see this little boy? Hey, I've got the money in the back room. Follow me. So again, I had no reason to be afraid, but I did follow him just like any other little boy. And I trusted my neighbors and the door shut and my life completely changed from that day on. I was horribly abused. It happened so fast and so violent. I didn't even know how to process what had happened. And then came the threats. Okay, and after what had just happened to me, threatening to hurt my little sister was not an option. Because I was raised being a responsible little boy and I was a Boy Scout and I did not want what had happened to me to happen to my little sister. So I made the decision from that day forward, I would speak nothing and I would not tell anybody because of the fear that had been placed in me that would happen to my sister. And I had also been led to believe that if I said anything, that I would be removed from my family. That was a big thing. And I didn't know the law. I was an 8-year-old boy. I did not know that. But they told me I would be taken from my family from what I had done. You see, they brainwashed me into believing that I had done something wrong. And I believed that for many years of my life, that I somehow had done something that caused this to happen to me. So it didn't end there. It was the beginning of 6 years of complete hell. I ended up, finding myself being manipulated by more than one, because the sad thing is that there was a man that lived behind me and also 4 doors down on an alley. Okay. So we shared an alley in East Phoenix, but the connection was this man was also the janitor, a paid employee of the church where I went. So somehow the man, which was a janitor, and the man that lived across the street knew each other. I never figured out how they knew each other or how you even have a topic that goes along the lines of how do we, mutually decide to abuse children? How does that conversation even happen? I have no idea, but that was my reality. So the man at the church would use the church and the facility as a place to abuse boys. And so over the course of 6 years, it was a well-organized ring that abused boys, and it was in my church. And sadly, 3 of my childhood best friends, my closest best friend, took his life about 5 years ago. And I had lost complete touch with him. But when I visited with a mutual friend, he told me that he had struggled his whole life and that he didn't know who he was and he struggled with identity. And I said to myself, I guarantee you that he had the same thing that happened to me. But we had, after everything happened, after high school, after everything, we all walked away and we tried to live our lives. But sadly, I've made multiple attempts on my life. And the last one was the one that finally got me help because I couldn't survive. When you're traumatized as a kid, like I was, my brain developed something of a coping skill. And it's a disorder. I don't like that word because I don't think that's fair. But it's called Dissociative Identity Disorder, or DID. It used to also be called multiple personality syndrome. People my age remember the movie Sybil. And sadly, that whole story was also fake, which is sad. But it left a mark on people. And for a while there, that was popular, was, multiple personality. And then DID also became popular because people were fascinated by those of us that had the condition. I don't have it anymore. I am completely, that is gone. Any and all mental challenges that I had DID with 10 personalities. Which made it difficult for me was that they were different ages, different skill sets, and different orientations. So imagine living your life when you're switching and you don't even know that you're switching because my personalities were not co-conscious. So I would switch in a conversation and not know that I had switched. But what I did develop was a wicked set of skills that I could out communicate anybody. I could literally switch in a conversation, not know who you are, not know why I'm talking to you. You're now talking to somebody else. You don't know it. I don't know it, but I somehow managed to steer the conversation in such a way that you don't realize that you're actually talking to somebody different. And that's the truth. So it was subtle. And I wasn't actually diagnosed with it until late in life. And then it was like a big eye opener. Well, that makes sense because when you have a condition like this, I would wake up in places that I don't know how I got there. Like literally, I would wake up in a space I had been traveling and I woke up and now I'm in somebody's house and I don't know how I got here. That's the
Oh,
reality.
wow.
That would happen to me. And it happens
Wow.
to people that have DID. It is a coping skill. Where does it come from? It comes from being repeatedly abused in a severe way. 1% of the US population has DID. 95+% of it comes from childhood trauma. That's severe and repetitive. Doesn't have to be sexual. It could be physical abuse. It could be severe verbal abuse. But what happens is, if you think of it, I had to be a little boy and then I had to go to school and pretend that everything was okay, even though it wasn't. Well, eventually, pretending led to the formation of a personality. And the formation of that personality became more permanent. So my brain began splitting as a way to protect me from the horrible things that were happening to me. And that's how the brain would disconnect. So it developed. I'm grateful. I love myself today.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that my brain did what it was designed to do. I'm also grateful that I don't have that anymore. That is for darn
Oh,
sure. Like I don't have that today, and that's part of my story. So, I tried to live my life. I was successful in business. I have a degree in finance and real estate, and I did well. I did. People that knew me, especially now that they know my story, they're like, okay, I can see it. But at the time, sometimes Thayne, you were just a little peculiar, but we didn't know why. Yeah, well, now you know why. I always knew I was different, and I knew that even as a child, okay? I knew I was different as a kid because I felt things. I've always felt things, not only things that you can see, but things that you can't see that I can also
yeah.
feel, and I've always been that way. So, let's talk about my near-death experience.
May I stop you for a second
You
there?
sure can.
I just wanna make sure that I say this to you from my heart is I almost was bawling when you were talking. That is one of the saddest things I've heard in a really long time. And I also think that you feeling different was beautiful too at the same time.
Thanks, you're gonna make me tear. I'm tearing up now, so thank you
It
for saying.
is though. Um, I know that there's a lot kids can be cruel
Yeah,
and
that's
adults,
very true. I was
obvious,
bullied
right?
horribly, horribly.
I bet.
My best
Um,
friend was a piano. My best friend was a
well,
piano.
isn't that you know what? That you just gave me goosebumps all the way up my neck. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's my
Because
gift.
your outlet right into the keys
It
of
is
that
one of my
piano, and
languages.
then
Yeah,
that's what you
it's
focused
actually
on.
tattooed on my arm. See? Can you
Yeah,
see that? You see my piano?
beautiful.
Yeah, that's my piano. Um, my tattoos are my life story. The tattoo, this is my piano. There's 3 flowers on this arm.
Beautiful.
There's 3 butterflies that represent my daughters. I started talking about music because music is my first language. I began bouncing to music in my car seat as a little kid. I always bounced to the beat of my music. My mom would always say that I was always in time to the music from day one. And my first piano was a little tiny Beatles piano that I carried everywhere with me. And it was my best friend. It made noise and it went to sleep with me. My piano slept with me. Like I was literally like the kid from the Peanuts cartoon. Okay. That was me. So my whole life has been about music, and I was fortunate to have a music teacher that realized that I was never gonna be a classical pianist. That wasn't my forte, but I could play by ear. And I was extremely emotionally expressive on those keys. And so my piano teacher encouraged that behavior. And so I became an improv pianist. I can read and write music. I publish music. I actually get royalties from it, which is amazing. But the reality is
Wow.
that I play for my soul. I play for me. When I felt sad, I played sad. When I needed to be happy, I played happy. So I poured myself into music. And when I was 12 years old, I wrote a song called The Life of a Butterfly. And the reason that's important is because I wasn't able to tell what happened to me as a child. I couldn't tell people what was happening to me. I had to be quiet about it. And so I had been given an opportunity to write a composition in music. And so it's actually tattooed on my arm. And it looks like music burning through the flesh. And it's actually my 12-year-old handwriting as a little boy. And there's a title. It's called The Life of a Butterfly. And I wrote it because it was what I wanted to be as a kid. I wanted to be that butterfly because my life was ugly and I wanted to be pretty and coveted like butterflies were. So I decided to write that song. And in the song, I take my hands and I smash the piano, which is weird. And I would do it and make people laugh. And I would tell a funny story before I would perform the song and make people laugh. But the truth was, I was telling my story, and the bashing on the piano was the abuse. And there's one final crash. I take all my hands, my elbows, everything, I smash all the keys, and I let the music ring. And when I do that, I bring the melody back, and I would tell people that the butterfly got hit by a Mack truck. They'd all laugh, and then I would say it went to heaven. And the reality was that was me as a child telling my story in front of people, and they had no idea what I was doing. So for many years, what I will tell you about the trauma brain is it deletes. Most of my childhood does not exist in the form of memories. I can see much of it today, but back then, most of my life, I could not tell you what happened to me. No, you could show me photographs. I might be able to tell you that was me, but I wouldn't know anything about the photo. And that's the truth. So it wasn't until, for me, it was that first suicide attempt in my early 30s. And crazy as it is, I lived a life of victimhood. I showed up as a victim my whole life, and that made me pissy and angry. And I showed up in the
Mm.
world that way. And I was always kind and friendly to my family and friends. But if I didn't know you and you looked at me the wrong way, I was definitely not somebody you wanted to tangle with. And I'm not proud of that, but that is also not who I am today. But I understand where that anger came from and why I was showing up in the world that way. So when I began my own healing after that suicide attempt, I was saved by a little boy that I sat next to in the boys' choir when I was a little boy. A little boy that sat next to me was a grown man that recognized a text message one day and he saved my life. That's true. So I started therapy. I didn't know what had happened to me, but I knew that I was in trouble. I had gotten addicted to prescription drugs. At one point, I had 7 pill boxes. And I think it's important to point out that doctors have good intentions, but oftentimes the solution is medication, medication, medication and medication on top of medication. And it was affecting me to the point that it was impacting the quality of my life. I started getting tardive dyskinesia. I started getting facial movements. I started getting leg kicking. And I'm like, I am not okay with this. Like, I don't care what these drugs are supposed to make me better, but it's hurting me and I can feel it. And at the end of the day, I will never heal unless I can learn to look at, touch, and feel these things that happened to me as a kid. And that's the truth. So I made a decision with my therapist, and trust me, I love therapy and therapists are amazing. I would not be alive if it wasn't for my therapist. It's a great place to start. It's not the only way to heal, and I think that's important, okay? So when I went off of the medication with doctor's permission, I I started looking at my life in a way that I couldn't see before. Okay. And what I mean by that is when you're on heavy meds like that, it affects your ability to think clearly. And I was never able to think clearly. I always felt, quote, medicated. So going off that medication was a good step for me. And it was something that I had to make that choice again with my doctor's permission. And we talked about it. But ultimately, it was a near death experience in the pool. I drowned in my swimming pool. So one of the last physicians that gave me medication gave me something that I was allergic to. And I ended up having a seizure in the middle of the night. I was alone. I had a seizure while swimming, and I ended up going underneath the water and I inhaled the water as I went down. And I don't have all of the memories of that entire experience, but I woke up, MJ, at the bottom of the pool. And when I woke up, it was like, wait a minute. The moon's up there. I'm covered in water. I can't breathe. Where have I been? Like that was the question. Why am I here and how did I get here? Now I knew enough not to get like panicked because that's when you die. So I realized I was under the water. And I realized that I wanted to live. I knew I had been someplace, but I didn't know where I had been immediately. That did not come to me. Okay.
Mhm.
And I think it's important. I want to share this. I had an experience as a child that I was abused to a point. Sometimes the abusers would drug us and they would drug us and make it a little bit easier for us to be hurt and not remember it. So I also became an addict as a little kid from being given pills I should never have been given by people who should never have given them to me. Nonetheless, um, I had an experience where they overdosed me and and I mean overdosed me to the point that I left my body. And the way that they revived me was putting me in an ice chest, a big gigantic ice chest, like the kind you have for big parties. They submerged me in that ice chest because I left. I left my body and I went to the corner of the room. And that's the honest truth. I went to a space that existed not where I was at. And what was weird was it was very real, just like this world, but there were people there that I knew, but I didn't know how I knew them. And then one of
Mhm.
them stepped forward, and that was my grandfather. And I knew him in my life. He had died 2 years prior to this experience where I ended up being submerged in the ice bath. And he he met me, he embraced me, he held me the entire time that I could see the pedophiles trying to wake me up, trying to bring me back alive, and he was holding me. And I'll never forget that feeling because I didn't want to leave his arms. Like I knew if I went back into that body, it was going to hurt. And I didn't want to go. That's the truth. I had that conversation with my grandfather and it went along the lines of, "Hey, I don't want to go back. I like this. I like you. I like this feeling of love because that's what you feel on the other side. It's love. It is the most intense love that you can imagine. You can't even put a value on how it feels." But I felt it. And my grandfather was very clear. He said, he's like, "Young man, you have many things in your life that you have to complete, and you have not completed those things. So you're going back." And I, I remember arguing with him, and he ultimately like pushed me, literally took his hands, rested me up, and pushed me into my body. And that was my first NDE as a child. I will tell you that from that one event, I had also learned how to kind of go back to that space in my head. So it was a gift even back then as an early child. And that's also kind of where the dissociation would come from because I could disconnect from my body when people hurt me, right? I
Mm.
literally go ahead. You want to stick a cigarette butt and burn me? Go ahead. I'm not going to respond because I have literally shut off my body. And my brain was able to do that. I got that skill from learning about the other side. Okay. So I'm going to fast forward to when I got into that pool. You see, that happened just a couple of years ago. August of 2023 is when that happened. And so when I came to at the bottom of the pool, the feeling that I had was that I had been there before, you see? So I knew I had been to this space, this other realm that exists beyond the reality that we know. I did not have instant recall. When I came out of the water, I was like my body didn't cooperate. I couldn't swim. I just kind of meandered. Like I was kind of literally moving my body, just trying to find a place in the pool where I could stand back up. And then I made it over to an area of the pool where I could just rest in about a foot and a half of water. I have a little area in the play part of the pool. And I laid there and I remember looking up at the stars and the moon and being drawn into it. Like w- I became fascinated with the
Mhm.
cosmos and stars and balance and science. And, but yet I didn't quite have a full recollection of everything that had happened. It didn't happen for me like that. So I spent the last, since August of 2023 unpacking what happened that night. And not only that, but the information that was literally deposited into my head. So the best way to describe it to somebody is sometimes we just know things and we know them and we don't know why we know them, but we know them. Like you could call it a deja vu kind of moment. Like we've all had those
Mhm.
kind of experiences where we feel like we've known this before. So the thing that's in my head, this knowledge that's in there, came from that experience. And then I've spent my life last 2.5 years unpacking that and remembering things like what was life review like? Because I didn't remember my life review immediately, but I can tell you all about it now. And it's
Mhm.
important for people to understand how life review works as part of your story because I had a relationship with God, MJ, where it was detrimental. I didn't like God. I feared God. I was raised in religious dogma that was built upon fear, and I believed I would never be good enough. I was never going to be righteous enough, and it also caused a massive amount of depression in me because I was being abused by the very people who then judged me as morally clean. Talk about messed up. That's what my bishop would do. My bishop was one of the people that hurt me. And then he would interview me as a 12-year-old boy and ask me if I was morally clean. Do you know how corrupt that is? That's the truth. So I do have an active litigation case against the LDS Church right now. And I'm hoping someday that I can use that money from whatever I gain to found and fund a nonprofit that does nothing but teach the healing protocol that God showed me how to heal. Because here's the thing, MJ, when I came out of that water, I went in as 10 different people. I came out as one person.
Mm.
Okay. That was weird for me. I came out of the water and suddenly I didn't know who I was because in my mind, suddenly I could see 10 different people that had once past tense existed, but they don't work the same anymore. They don't have the ability to step forward and take the body. They don't have that ability. But what I can do is I can still use the memory circuits. So what I mean by that is when I look at a situation, I'm understanding it from 10 perspectives. Okay. Some of them are old, some of them are young, some of them are masculine, and some of them are feminine. Who cares? But what I do understand is the world and the perspectives from multiple viewpoints. I've used that my whole life as a gift. It's made me very successful because I see things that most people don't see. Most of my life I said I was a victim, but you can see how having DID as an adult that's now healed is actually a superpower because I understand things that most people do not understand. And that's the truth. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I drowned in the pool. I'm grateful that I went through life review. I'm grateful that when I experienced life review, that I met an all-loving and amazing God. I met a God that had a sense of humor. I met a God that said, look, Thayne, here's your life. And boom, you're looking at your life. It is like magic. And you are watching it. It is real time. And you watch it. Now understand, I'm talking chronologically. On the other side in heaven, there is no time. Okay? So I'm talking in time so that you understand it. But on the other side, it's all present. There is no time. It just exists. So what I mean by that is in life review, we are organized by bubbles of probability. Okay. When I met God and I did meet God and God showed me how the world is organized, I went back to the very beginning. Truth. The beginning. Which is also funny because there's really no beginning and there's also no end, but I have to give you that frame of reference for you to understand that I began with God in the dark, in the dark. And then God showed me light. Why? Because God created light first. Okay? So light was created and then a word was spoken into existence. That's also true. And if you understand the cosmos like I do, I'm a big fan of the string theory. And if you understand the string theory, it basically says that the universe is two big, gigantic strings and they vibrate. And when they vibrate, they create things, which is true. It's literally the vocal box of God is those strings. And that is true. I'm telling you, that's how it works. But it's also a Fibonacci sequence. Okay, that's important because there is a grand design behind everything. Research has now shown that when the spermatozoa meets the egg in a human being, the surface of the egg actually shows a Fibonacci sequence before the genes are inserted into the cell. So what does that mean? That means there is a grand design. We're part of it. We are part of that grand design, right? So we come here to get a body. We get a body so that we can learn. That's it. Our bodies are an input mechanism for the soul. It's a rental unit. Okay? This is not home. Home is there. Home is everywhere else, but this reality, this physical thing that we call earth in this life experience, it's only temporary. Okay? So while you're here, you got to take advantage of everything that is available to you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here's why it's important. The ugly things that happen in our lives are nothing more than course correction and moments of teaching. That's important because I always thought I was being punished. I always felt I wasn't good enough. And because I was making bad choices and absorbing this or addicted to that, I was never good enough. And so I lived, again, victim perspective until you start looking and understanding that no, life can be completely different when you change your perspective. I'm not a victim anymore, ever. What I see is an amazing life because every time something ugly happened to me, it was the best possible outcome. And that's the truth. The ugly things that happen in this life happen because of the thoughts and the evil actions of men, us. Okay? It is our ego that creates the ugliness in the world of which we sadly get thrown into. So if it wasn't by the grace of God to protect me, I would have died many times. I know that. I'm a walking miracle and I'm grateful for that. I can say that today, and I'll be the last guy to ever take my life. I'll tell you that. That ain't never happening. No way. No. Mm-mm. So along the way, I learned how to heal myself. Okay. And I learned it in a way that God showed me how to do it. So when I came out of the pool, I was acting weird. You interview my family, talk to my kids, they'll tell you that I was acting strange. I would go up to the sinks and I'd turn the water on and I'd watch the water go down the drain, and I was fascinated. I'd stand there for 15 minutes and I'd throw things in the water to watch it turn. And I was fascinated by it. My wife is like, literally, my husband has lost his damn mind. That's what she's saying. Okay. And scared to death because it was weird. I'm not gonna lie. It was weird. I became fascinated with small things, with science, with molecules, thermodynamics. And I'm a musician and a finance guy. That's my degree. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I consider myself one today. And I'll tell you why, because I studied neuroscience. That is what God showed me, is how we can heal ourselves through neuroscience. Okay. So specifically, it is the most powerful word in the world. Okay. Now, I know everybody wants me to say the word love. That's true. Love is the most powerful force in the world. That is true. There's another little word that goes with love that is equally important, if not more important. And that's the word gratitude. And the reason it's so important is because gratitude is the spark and the fuel for love. Okay. And why that's important today is because we live in a world where we're closed off. COVID screwed us up. We're politically divided. We're in a country that is ugly. We don't look at people in the world. We walk around with our heads in shame. It's not a good place to be. The world is the sickest I have ever felt it. Walking into the world today is ugly because you feel the negative energy everywhere. So I learned that gratitude is how we heal ourselves. And specifically, there is neuroscience behind gratitude. When you experience gratitude, I'm not talking please and thank you, not writing lists. I'm not talking that. I tried that. I did a social media experiment where I lived in gratitude for 365 days. Started September 20th of 2024. For 365 days, I have gotten up and watched every sunrise and looked into what is this word called gratitude. What I was not expecting was for it to completely change my life and teach me something so revolutionary and powerful that I'm now helping others learn how to heal themselves, right? I don't heal people, okay? I teach you how to heal yourself. And I teach you the way that God showed me how to do it. And it's not hard. It really isn't. It's an understanding of the word gratitude. It's an understanding of the word unconditional love. And it's understanding that as human beings, we learn best by experiencing, not by reading. When we read things, we retain 10%. When we experience things, we retain 90%. So I spent 2 years of my life creating something called the equation of life and abundant happiness. And it's literally based upon a mathematical formula. I teach it, you learn it. It's so easy. And it's based upon the principles of math because MJ, the world is balanced in perfect balance. Okay. That cosmos is perfectly balanced at all times. And we can also have that same balance in our lives if we learn how to better manage the human emotions that are a big part of our physical experience here. Most people don't do a good job with emotions. They weren't trained on how to be emotionally intelligent. They've also developed really bad habits about not being in the present moment. Like the first thing that God showed me is you have to become aware, Thayne. I had a horrible habit of never staying present. I was never in the present. I was always thinking about my ugly past that I couldn't grow out of and the future that I was obsessed with because I also couldn't control it. But where was I never? In the magical here and now, the moment where God talks. God doesn't live in the past. God does not live in the future. God lives right here, right now. But most of us never see. we never see God. Okay, because we're too busy, and
Mhm.
especially today with these things called phones, we're distracted.
Thayne, can I step back for a moment?
Yep.
There is a few things that I noticed
Okay.
about your experience that I did want to ask you about before we get on. First of all, so you drowned in a pool.
Mhm.
You had left your body. Took you
Mhm.
2 years.
Yes.
So then you went up to the other side, and that's when you met with God.
Yep. And I
May
did
I
like,
ask you,
yeah.
what is God? Because everybody wants to know, is God a person? Is God a light? Is God a consciousness? In your words,
Yeah.
what you experienced,
Yeah.
what was God to you?
God was all of those things you just said.
Yeah.
Everything. Okay. So God is everything. Okay.
Mhm.
Every molecule is tracked. Okay. And it's tracked because God showed me by light and sound. Every word we speak exists forever. We can't hear it, but it's still reverberating in the universe. That's why it's really important that you control your words. And it's also important to know that if you've lived a life of negative energy, you got plenty of time to turn it around by creating goodness in the world. And that's how you balance it. If you've created a lot of negative energy in the world, then you got plenty of time to go out in the world and create love because that's unconditional. And that's what I do today. I live in gratitude. And I know that the powers up above are happy with where I'm at. And I know that because I see glimmers everywhere I go. I walk with God every day. So, what is God? God is energy. God is light. God can be human. Okay. God can take the form of human beings. Absolutely. And God has actually taken the form of many beings that have been around the earth, not just the one that most people think of. That's also true. Call it
Mhm.
blasphemy, but there's only one God. Okay. And here's the truth when you look at all the religions in the world, look at all the wars that have been in the world over religion. We're killing people in the name of God. How is that not blasphemous? Because that is not what God teaches. God is love, period. End of discussion. So when you understand that there's one rule and the rule is this when it operates in love, then it's operating of God. And when it's not operating in love, then it's not operating of God. And that's the only thing you need to know. Anything else outside of that is an interpretation by humans. That's the truth. And you got to understand, kick the tires. Trust me, I looked at every religion in the world. There's over 4,000. Did I study all 4,000? No, but I hit the big ones and I met them and I discussed why they believed what they believed. And I wanted to know. And what's interesting is if you look at every religion, at the top of every religion is the word love. It is the source of goodness in whatever framework that you've adopted. And if you're an atheist, which by the way, I was an atheist, I left Mormonism and Christianity. I became a complete atheist. I believed in nothing. Then I moved into being an agnostic. There's something out there that's bigger that understands this universe, and I don't know what it is, but I'm hell bent on finding it out. Well, I died in that pool and I found it out and I ain't going anywhere. And now I know that my purpose is to help people find their own path, find the light within themselves, and to be able to return. But here's the truth. You can have heaven on earth today. Today. You don't have to wait to be happy. You don't have to wait until you get that job, that dream boyfriend, that dream girlfriend. You don't have to you don't have to wait. Happiness starts right now. When you make the choice to quit being a victim and to change how you show up in life. So,
Mhm.
if you want to change, it's neuro, it's neuroscience. You have to learn how to rewire your brain. And that's what God showed me how to do. And that's the course that I now teach. It's called the Equation of Life and Abundant Happiness. And it's based upon the operators, don't laugh when I say this, of math. Okay? Because math is actually what keeps the world in balance. If I want to get to the sun, it's a mathematical equation of how to get there. It's also a mathematical equation of how it rotates and how often and why. That's all math. Okay.
Mhm.
So if that's physical matter and governed by physics properties, human emotion is also a physical property and it's also matter. So therefore, what happens if I applied physical properties from science and math to human emotion and my life? That is the equation of life and abundant happiness. And it's actually a series, it's a formula. It's made up of symbols, and the symbols are the things that we learned as children. Why that's important is because you already know the symbols. The symbols are addition. I add things in my life that bring forth goodness and joy. That's addition. The next operator in math is subtraction. Letting go of those things that don't serve us, that don't bring forth joy. So what does God expect us to do? God expects us to balance in the moment with our own energy and our own action, and we can all do that. We can. So you learn to live in the present moment, to stay aware. In that present moment, you can add and subtract what you need instantly to maintain what I call neutral balance, because that's ultimately what I teach. God lives in neutral. I live in neutral today. Abundant happiness is when you have zero filters and you have no fear. I can do anything I want. I can be negative if I need to, because sometimes it's okay to be negative if the outcome is going to be positive and it's being done in love. That's called purposeful polarity. That's something I teach in a course. Negative energy is one of those things that we have to have in order to understand how life works. Okay? You cannot know happiness unless you understand sadness. You could not live abundantly happy. Why? Because everything in life has an increase and a decrease. They do this, okay? So life has a natural peak, but the problem is most people, when life peaks right here, this is when people give up. This is when they quit saying, I don't believe anymore, and God must be mad at me, and we start playing shame and blame, and then we quit, okay? And when we lose faith and we lose belief, what happens is the downward side of this wave, which is going to happen anyways, you just collapsed it early. Okay. And what that means is because you literally lacked faith, the probability bubble, it goes away. It collapses. So what I teach is a way to learn where you're at on that wave. And we do that through glimmers. When you have a positive mindset and you use neuroscience to rewire your brain, and we do it with unconditional love and gratitude. That is the truth. I'm going to put you through 101 experiences of gratitude and love, and it is going to rewrite who you are and how you show up in the world. It is the most beautiful way to heal that I have experienced. And trust me when I say I've tried it all, because you've got the light in your heart. Okay. When you understand this, and I teach you this principle, and you go out into the world and you create kindness with strangers, it's going to light your heart in such a way that you can't turn it off, and it becomes your compass. My light that lives in my heart is how I lead my life today. I don't listen to my brain anymore because my brain will get me in trouble. My ego lies up here. Okay. I still have an ego. I do my best to keep it in check. And when you live with your heart, you learn that God is going to show you evidence of what I call glimmers. Because instead of a brain showing me negative things, my brain is now rewired to show me how amazing I am and the great things that I have in my life. Why? Because I rewired it with neuroplasticity. I taught my brain using Hebbian principles, experiences, and emotion. Emotion is the deepest teacher of all. So what if I could put yourself in a situation where I could teach you in a safe way how to dissolve fear? Because the truth is, fear is the same, okay? Fear of getting hit by a truck is the same fear of standing up in front of an audience. One of them's going to get me killed, and one of them is definitely a higher degree. But who assigns that? We do. We are the observers of our life. So what does that mean? We choose to be happy. and we choose to be sad. And that's the truth. And that's the honest truth. But you can't get there if your brain is rewired negative. That's why people get stuck. That's why I was stuck for over almost 40 years of my life living negatively until I learned how to rewire my brain. Okay. So getting back to what I was saying, add and subtract is about balance.
I'm going to sneak in there for a moment.
Go.
I just want to ask you, where did you go during your near death? Where do you think you went? Like,
I
what did you
mean,
see? Was it
yeah,
light?
yes. Yeah. So it's like this. Okay. Heaven exists around us, but it's in a realm of frequencies and energies that we cannot see and experience with our naked eyes. We can't, but it's right here. Okay. Our loved ones that have passed on, that are on the other side, they are right here and they are right here and they are actually right around me right now. I can feel them. Okay. I feel my family often. And those are angels. Okay. Those are lives that have lived, that are on the other side. And the beautiful thing about angels is they can do amazing things. Like, I know my angels, man. My guardian angel is my grandfather, and he's a very sharp man. I am grateful to know what he knows because he helps me all the time. I'm still very connected to the other side. I still have some amazing skill sets that I've developed. And I'm not saying that to tout my own horn. I'm just saying when you've had the kind of life I've lived, you experience things, and I'm grateful for what I know. Very grateful. So, where did I go? Right here. But it doesn't look the same. There's like
Mhm.
no ceiling. Okay. There's no ceiling. Like, that's weird to say that, but there's no ceiling. It's almost like you're in a space that exists and it changes. It's rapid. It goes, like literally, if I said, God, I want to have a big mansion because I've always had a little house and I wanted a big mansion, God could go, boom, there you go. And there's your big house. And it's just as solid as this table. That's the truth. And that's also why you don't want to come back because the other side is magical. Okay.
Were you
And
given a choice to come back, do you think?
oh, yeah, for sure. I had to negotiate that. hmm
How did you do that?
that was a conversation I had with God for sure. And an understanding that my life had a purpose that I didn't understand, but I know now. I know that
Mhm.
God gave me a second chance. That's the truth. And I know that coming back here was also, I have to share what I've learned. I did well in corporate America, and I'm not wealthy, but I have what I need. Okay. And I could go back to corporate America and I could lead, but I don't want to do that. I want to help people heal, people just like me that were broken, that the system said, you'll never be healed. Do you know how many times I heard that from a psychologist or a psychiatrist that said, unfortunately, this is something you're going to have the rest of your life. You're just going to have to learn to deal with it. I had person after person that wouldn't even work with me because they would say, I could help you if you were a child, but I don't know how to help an adult male that was abused as you were as a child. And that's the truth. I had so many people that would not even attempt to work with me. And I know there are people right now that are listening that are getting that same experience. And this message is for you. I want you to know that you matter. Your life matters and it can change. And you don't have to be who you think you are. You can change who you are today and you can live the most abundant, amazing life. And that's true. It is honestly true. I never thought I would heal. I never thought I would be able to have one personality. I'm not bipolar anymore. I'm not ADHD anymore. I'm none of these things. I am balanced. That is who I am. I'm balanced.
Thane, I noticed something in your two NDEs. The common denominator through your NDEs was water.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure if you thought about this,
yeah.
but do you know what the significance is of the water that you experienced in both NDEs?
I have some feelings about water, interestingly.
Mhm.
Yeah, water, there's a phrase that says water never lies. Have you ever heard that? Okay. Water never lies. And water, no, and water is a balancing agent, isn't it? If you pour water onto anything, what does it do? Levels every single time. Truth, right? There's a lot to be said in water. And there's some interesting things around water and time travel, and I'm still trying to figure that out in my brain. It's in there. Okay. There's
Well,
something,
water has to do with God as well.
yeah,
I've heard one of my guests said that God is water.
yeah. God is water,
I
God is
mean, I'm
everything.
not gonna say that it's not, but I'm just saying
100%.
that's what it was showed to him. Another guest was shown, they were very sick and they were taken to healing waters.
Yeah,
So, I'm listening to you speak, and
yeah.
you had NDEs in water each time.
Twice. Yeah,
Mhm.
twice.
So,
Mhm.
something significant with water
There
for
is.
you.
There is.
You must
Yeah,
have been
and I
healing.
yeah, definitely,
Mhm.
and again, I don't get into everybody gets to choose their religion, okay?
Yeah,
And I don't pick religion. I don't say, people say, "Thayne, well, what religion are you today?" Well, that's mine.
exactly.
That is
That's
my
right.
knowledge, and you get to pick your religion and works good for you. I know who I report to. I know who that is, what that is. I call it more than anything because it literally is everything. It's kind of
Mhm.
funny that it is actually in my web domain. And so that's why my website, when I was going through this and I figured out the equation of life and abundant happiness, I'm like, okay, I want to teach this to people so they can heal. Okay. I knew that I had to be able to share it in such a way that it would make sense to people. And that's the other beautiful thing, right? We only hit add and subtract. We didn't hit multiplication and division, but those are important, right? What is multiplication? Multiplication is when I take my action and intention and I align it in love with that higher power. And when I do that, it expands, it gets bigger. That's multiplication. So if I had $100 and I put my action and attention and God helps me, now I've got $1,000. Okay. But here's what's important. When you get that $1,000, there's a principle called abundance. And that's what we're not living in the world today. The principle of abundance is a value that comes from your heart. The value that comes from the heart that says, this is what I need, and I need a little bit more to feel safe. So in that example, if I had $1,000 and I need $700 to pay my bills, I might say I'm going to keep 850 because I just want a little bit of cushion, God, because something might happen. So what does that mean? That means that there's still 150 that's excess. I don't need it. So where does it go? That's division, the next operator in math. Division says we take our expanded goodness and we share it with our fellow man, the very people who helped you create it in the first place. Put it back. See, we live in a world where we don't do that anymore. We have the highest amount of wealth distribution in the history of mankind. We're going to have our first trillionaire, and yet we still have people in poverty that can't even have running water. Look at that. None of that would be in existence today if we operated in abundance. And that's the truth. So the law of division is about dividing the expanded love that God creates. It's also about sharing burdens when we experience things in life that are difficult. For example, when we lose somebody close to us, we often have to leverage the love of our family and friends to help carry that burden of the loss of a loved one. That's also division, isn't it? So
Mhm.
add, subtract, multiply, divide are the four operators of the equation of life and abundant happiness. And then I discovered that the equal sign is gratitude. That equal sign is the balancing agent that you're calling water. Okay. and it is the secret to abundant happiness in life. When you live in gratitude, you're actually using neuroscience, okay? There's study after study that shows that neuroscience, when we exercise gratitude, it actually quiets the amygdala, which is the fear, fight, or flight mechanism in our brain. And when we practice gratitude, it quiets it. It cannot operate in fear and anger when I'm operating in gratitude because it lights up your prefrontal cortex and it makes you rationally solve your problems. So when you live in gratitude, you're less emotional.
So I can attest to you. I can attest to that. I know that 100, and I'll tell you this, before a month ago, I wasn't 100%. Okay. But I am now. I can attest to exactly what you're saying because I lost my mother and I was in with her for 10 days.
Mm,
And I, I know this is just short because it matters and it really relates to what you're saying.
yeah.
On my way up to where my mom lives, I had to drive there and I listened to an audiobook called Conversations with God by Neil
Mm,
Wash. And in
mm,
that book, he talks about the right way to pray.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
And it was like a light bulb moment for me.
I love that.
So then I locked in. If that was the only thing I took from that book, which it wasn't, but we'll just say it was,
Yeah,
I locked into it
yeah,
completely.
yeah.
So what I did was I thought to myself, I'm stopping praying for someone's life because it's not mine. It's not
Mm,
my choice
yes,
when it's her time. This is
yes.
her journey, her time on her
You're
terms.
giving me the chills, girl.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I ended up doing was I said, okay, um, then alls I can ask for and all I can say is thank you for giving me acceptance. Thank you for giving me understanding. And thank you for helping me with emotional stability.
Yeah,
And that's all I was thankful for. And
that's,
then I said, I'm thankful for 52 years that I got to spend with this woman.
yeah,
And I am not kidding you. Every single moment I sat and said that. I am not kidding, Thane. I
yeah,
then was sitting beside her and she was sleeping and I kept doing it over and over in my head. I'm not begging for her life. I'm not begging for more time. I'm
yeah,
not doing it. It's
yeah.
not mine to do.
That's right.
And so what ended up happening was I got this feeling that came in my head
Mhm.
through my entire body that felt like the unconditional love in my own NDE. And I operated for 10 days in that love.
That's so beautiful.
And
So
everybody kept asking me, how are you not bawling?" Because
you understand.
I act and I'll be very honest, this is how good it works, people, is
Yeah,
that at one point, I was smiling, and
yeah,
I wasn't in any place to be that you were gonna be smiling, but that's how I was feeling inside
yes,
because I was full.
yes. That's the
There
word.
is something to what you're saying. I
Yeah,
can attest to that. Thank you for
yeah.
listening because it works.
It does. It's funny
It
that
works.
you bring that up because one of the things that God showed me is, and you're right, like in the way that we pray. Okay. Now, specifically, I teach 4 words. Okay. And I mix prayer and neuroscience because I understand both languages. Okay. And what I mean by that, so I teach 4 words. The first one is believe. Okay. Because that's first. If you don't believe, then neither does God. And that's the truth. So you better believe it with 100%, not 99.9. And I will tell you that most people fail because of the point one. Okay. They honestly don't believe that God's going to provide. Deep down in their psyche, that's what they believe. And if you believe that, then yes, you're correct. God is not going to provide with what you think you need. That's the truth. Okay. So belief comes first. The next word is become. Okay. And the reason it's become is because we have to embody it. When we embody what we're trying to do and achieve, we become it right now. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that we don't need to wait to become happy. We can be happy right now, today. I can be homeless. Literally, you could take everything away from me and I would be absolutely fine. I would be. I would be fine being homeless. And I'm not saying that. And trust me, I've been homeless before. Okay. I've I I've done it twice when I was homeless. And it was brief, but it taught me something. That's for sure. And so embodiment is about becoming. It's literally every ounce of my being, and it's also putting action and intention. Okay? That is becoming. When I say to God, this is what I'm trying to do and here's my action and this is my intention, okay? That is that is part of become. Okay? It's belief, become. The next one is bestow. Old biblical word, okay?
I like that.
Bestow is the downside of the probability wave because everything in life is a wave. That is also science. Everything exists as a wave. Everything. So that's also why when God is taking you up the path of goodness, we reach a pinnacle because it always does. But the problem is that when we reach the pinnacle, most people give up because they say, oh, I must be doing something wrong, or they lose patience because it's not happening fast enough. And I was guilty of that one a big time. Most of the time, when I would fail in prayer and manifestation, it was because I lost faith on the downward side of the wave. So, what you have to understand is that bestow is all about faith. It's all about time and proving to God that you believe still with 100%. Not 99.9. If you have point 0.1 in the bestow phase, you failed. And the probability bubble is going to collapse and you're not going to get what it is you're trying to create or achieve. That's the truth. So you learn that bestow is what gets most people in trouble with what their prayer. Okay. Now, here's what they don't teach you in prayer or any manifestation course that I've ever taken. And here's the truth. It's called letting go of the outcome. And if you think about it, when you're telling God what to do, you think of you as you know what I mean? You've raised children. When your children tell you what to do you do to your children? You're like, no, I don't necessarily need to listen to you because I know a little more than you do here at this stage of life. And no, you're not getting that. God does the same thing. Okay. And God also has a sense of humor. That is also true, which I love, by the way. Like, I was blown away that God had a sense of humor. Trust me, he's laughed a lot at my life. But so when we talk about bestow, it's about letting go and letting God know that, hey, I'd like this, but in the end, God, I know that you need to give me what I need. I'd love to have this and I'd love to have that, but God, I'm willing to take what you give me because you know what I need. Okay. So when you let go of the outcome, that's when you're most likely going to get what it is you're trying to get. And that's the truth. So letting go of the outcome is one thing that messes most people up in prayer and manifestation. And it's actually what? It's a demonstration of faith, isn't it? It's faith and belief. One more time saying, okay, I'm trusting you that you got this big plan somewhere in the sky and you know how this thing's going to roll. So I want X, Y, and Z, God, but I'm willing to take B and C. I guess if that's what you want me to do, I'm willing to take that and be grateful.
I also think, though, that people forget that it's a gift and that, I mean, that we're just even here,
Oh, you have,
you
yes.
know?
You're a
But at
miracle
the
that you're
same
even
time,
here.
I
Yes.
know we're the bravest people. If you're here right now,
Oh,
you are
we are the
super
warriors.
brave for coming
We are
here.
the warriors. I'm telling you right
Exactly.
now, our world is
And
at the worst it's ever been.
it is, but
We are the warriors.
that's also because there's some of us decide that it is
Yeah,
in their head,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
We're all together. If we all decided, nope, this is going to be heaven on earth, all of us at
yeah.
once, it would be.
It would be. Yeah, that's
It's
absolutely
that
true.
easy.
Yeah,
But it's seriously so easy, but
yeah.
it's so hard.
If I could
Get
get on a
food.
world
Yeah.
stage, if I could get on a world stage and
Yep.
teach XM neuroconditioning to everybody on the planet in 2 weeks' time, maybe even in less than a week, okay, we would bring heaven to earth. We would operate in abundance. We would let go of our crap. We would love unconditionally. We would live in abundant happiness, honestly, and we would have light and love everywhere. That's the truth, right? That's also what drives me. I,
Thayne,
I,
don't you think that we already know these things?
yeah, but why aren't we
We're
doing
all spirit beings. This
amen?
isn't our first rodeo.
No,
Don't we
no.
know this? So wouldn't that mean that we actually needed to just remember?
Yes, absolutely. That's where you came from, right? Look, here's the truth. We're cut from the same. We are all beings of light, okay? When you die and you leave your rental unit behind because you were just renting it and you go back to the other side, you exist as energy. And the energy is organized. And what I mean by that is you still have your memory, you still have all of that because memory is stored in light. Okay. Your memory is stored in light. That is the data. Okay. We have DNA in our bodies. That's the physical DNA. We also have DNA in our light, and that's from the light that we were cut from originally. We all come from the same source of light. We are light beings. Okay. We're put into this body to learn and to grow and to stumble and to screw things up and to get bloody and then to stand back up and go, I don't really quite get that, but I must be learning something. Because the minute you shift that perspective, that negativity is nothing but teaching and course correction, that's a hell of a lot better way to live your life. You know what I mean?
You said that your purpose
Mm,
here, you found your purpose, you're living your purpose. I
yeah.
wanted to run something by you.
Okay.
What would you think if I said, do you think that your purpose was actually just to find yourself?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. It's everybody's purpose is to find your original self. Okay. And, and there's three things that I share with people. Three things. Okay. The first thing is that God wants to know that you understand unconditional love. That is kind of what I'm going to call rule number one. And what I mean by that is, do you know right from wrong? And and are you willing to accept the fact that when you made bad choices, they were your choices? You weren't tempted by something that was your ego. Deal with it, get over it. That's the truth. So acknowledging your own participation in your own crap is important because you'll never grow until you accept the fact that you made those choices. And then, more importantly, what can I learn from those choices that I made? Because that's all that it is. The negative things that happen in our life are simply course correction and feedback. And it's saying, don't go there because if you stay there, it's not going to be good. And I've lived that life. And that's
Mm.
true. It's not good. It's not fun. It is not rewarding. It's not love.
It is rewarding. Look at
What's
you.
that? Oh,
I
today. Yeah.
said it is rewarding. Look at
Today.
you.
Yeah, today. But I had to
But
live the
look
ugliness.
at you.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thank you. That's so kind of you. And like you have such a lovely countenance. Like I love what you shared about your mom. That deeply touched me. My mom is
Mm.
stage 4 Alzheimer's right now. And she's on her last couple of months. We all know that because she's losing the ability to swallow. And that day will come where my dad and my family will gather and we'll make some difficult decisions on how to best take care of mom. But here's the thing. Most people look at Alzheimer's and they see that as a negative. Okay.
Mhm.
And honestly, I did too initially. But when you understand life and you understand that all negative is actually a teacher, we just have to balance the thought. You see, that's a bad habit that we have. We adopt negative energy because we're wired that way and it's easy to put the negative thought away. But if you actually look for the positive that exists at the same time that the negative is present and you balance it in the moment and you put that thought away in your head balanced, you're not going to have a negatively programmed mind. Because once I rewire it with gratitude and love, you have to focus on the positive so you don't become negative again. That's true. So that's a bad habit.
It's true. It is absolutely true
Yeah.
because when you show up in gratitude
Yeah.
and you sit down beside someone who is dying and you know they're transitioning,
Yeah.
it changes you.
It
You
does. And
stop
no,
looking at them
yeah,
as dying. You
no.
start looking at them as a
Mm,
life lived.
yes. And a life that continues living, right? When they change, that energy still exists. And when you
Yeah,
die, you're surrounded by all of that energy. All those beautiful light beings, all of those angels, they will be there
you
to
are.
greet you. That is true. Like, don't be afraid of death. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It is a beautiful, loving thing. And watching my mom, here's the thing with Alzheimer's today. I get to see what my mom was like as a little girl. It's it's beautiful to see. Yeah, because I wouldn't get that. I wouldn't get that
Yep.
opportunity to see my mom as a child, but I can sit there
Yeah.
and color with my mom, and I can fill in the dots, and I can do the things that she's still capable of doing, and it's a blessing, right? Because it's also brought my family together. Right? My dad is stronger. My relationship with my dad is stronger because of the Alzheimer's. I was always afraid of men. I was always afraid of my father, and that wasn't fair because my dad is a wonderful man, but he was a man and I was abused by men. So I never let him get close to me. I didn't. So when
You
Alzheimer's hit
probably
my
didn't let
family,
very many people get close to you,
what's
and
that?
that's your defense. You probably didn't let very
No,
many people get
no,
close, they
no.
got to a certain point and then it was no-go zone,
That's
right?
correct. Yeah, and that's
Mm,
also what led to a life of feeling alone. Loneliness right now, MJ, is one of the ugliest things in existence. We have men that are literally dying by the thousands every month
yeah.
because they're alone. Same with women. We've all grown away from connection and love, which is where we need to be. We isolate. When we walk outside of the light, we isolate. And I did. I isolated. But as I found the light, I realized how important it is to share it and to share it as often as you can with
Mm.
everybody that you can.
I really want you to come back
Okay.
and talk about a whole different thing because you're
Okay.
one of the most interesting people I
Thank you.
have met.
Thank you. You're
Mhm.
so
And I
kind.
I really enjoyed this so much.
Thank you.
But
Absolutely.
get your last word
Uh,
in before I say
yeah.
what I've gotta say.
All right. My last word is behold. Okay. It
Yeah.
has to end on behold. Okay. Belief, become, bestow, behold. Okay. Behold is what? Gratitude. Okay.
Mm.
So when God blesses your life and you get everything that you want and it's magical, don't forget to thank what you have. And that's the truth, right? And when we thank from our heart, it changes the hearts around you and it just keeps you in alignment with that light, which I will never, ever lose. Never. So it is belief become bestow, behold, the most important, behold. So thank you for letting me wrap that up.
For those who feel drawn to your work, can you
Yeah.
share your services, your offerings, and any published works?
Yeah.
And where can people find you?
Thank you for asking. So the best
You're
way to
welcome.
find me is my website. It's an awesome web domain. I know God left it for me. It's
I love
it's purelove.com. ITSPURELOVE.com. You can read about my courses, I work on a donation basis. If you're actually interested, you can click a 30-minute link on my schedule page, and we'll spend 30 minutes talking about your life and my life. And if we're a fit, great. And if not, that's okay too. Again, understand I work on a donation basis. There needs to be skin in the game because this work is challenging. And it's a lot of emotional energy for me to help you heal yourself. But I can do that. And I love helping people. That is what grows me more than anything, is watching other people that have struggled, that may have been abused, or maybe you weren't abused, but you've just had some difficult challenges in your life and you need to learn how to get over. So yeah, ispurelove.com. You can find me on Instagram. That's my name, ThayneMartin. And I will get my podcast back up again. There's all 260 podcast episodes that I did in my 365 days of gratitude are all on my website. You can find the links to my Instagram and my old YouTube channel, which was IPL Gratitude 365. And there's
And
a
we're going to
bunch of
have
stuff.
all of that in the description box below.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm not going, you got 2 more questions.
Okay.
So many people who return from experiences like near-death experiences come back with a truth.
Yeah.
What truth did you return with?
The truth is that God does exist, that God is real, and that you can change your life today, and you can be abundantly happy, and you can live in that light and that that love. That's the
It's
truth. And
beautiful.
don't let fear rob you of the joy that God actually has for you. Like I did that. I did not live that way. And I lived a life that was very challenging, right? So that's not a way to live. Let go of your crap, own it, stand back up, fix your brain. Neuroscience is the answer. Be careful of drugs. Some are good, some are bad. Use your doctors, right? Leverage your medical community, leverage your therapist, leverage your psychologist. But in the end, the work is going to be done by you. And that's the truth.
And Thane, that was absolutely gorgeous. But we can't let you go without knowing about your necklace.
Oh, my necklace.
We
Yeah.
can't because I love that. Let's
Yeah.
tell the audience what this means.
Yeah. So this is
It's
actually
so
the logo
fun.
for my company, and it's a butterfly. Okay. And it's made up of 4 imperfect hearts because our hearts are also imperfect. And each wing represents part of the balancing, right? Body, mind, soul, God. Okay. And then in the center is a perfect heart. And if I turn this over, you see it's actually in red. Okay, so this is how we come to Earth. And then when we find the light, we get to be like this. So this is my cross, if you want to call it that, because I don't care for that symbol. That symbol is negative and ugly. And the being that exists today that I've met, this is the right symbol. This is the right symbol, and it means unconditional love. So I hope that someday people see this symbol on everything and know that this means unconditional love. And I hope to sell a bunch of stuff on my website with this beautiful logo that God gave to me. This logo was designed by God. He just put it in my head. And it now is part of my logo at itspurelove.com. We call it a coolie fly. And that's what it's called.
And you are going to be selling those at some point, right?
Yes, on my website.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I
Yep.
hope you let us know here because I would really like to have one.
Oh, thank you. I will definitely
Yeah,
send you the link once I get them up.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thane, I cannot thank you enough. Not only for being here, but the courage to speak about what you spoke about, your vulnerability, and bringing such clarity, compassion to a topic that so many silently struggle with.
Yeah,
Your story doesn't just inform, it heals.
I'm grateful that I can be that for other people.
I am deeply grateful you shared your life here with the return. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And to all those watching, may this conversation be a reminder that healing doesn't always look linear, and wholeness is
Right.
possible even after profound fragmentation.
Yep.
And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and keep returning to the truth within you.